Top 10 Best Defenders in NBA History. The saying often goes in sports that offense may win games, but defense wins championships, and that is no exception in the NBA. With as many dominant scorers as there are in today's game, having a lockdown defender on your team is critical for winning games, especially in the playoffs. With that being said, let's talk about the top 10 defenders in NBA history who weren't just flashy scorers, but really knew how to intimidate an offense.
Comes over to help. Boston can take the lead.
10. Michael Jordan. Though better known for his play on the other end, Michael Jordan was the Defensive Player of the Year in 1988 and the MVP, a feat duplicated by just one other player in NBA history, Hakeem Olajuwon in 1994. He also has the second most blocks of any guard in NBA history. He led the league in steals 3 times and defensive box plus-minus twice, which isn't bad for a guy who shouldered, let's say, a significant scoring load. He finished his career with 9 all-defensive team selections, the last of which came in 1998 when he led the Bulls to their 6th title. 9. Scottie Pippen. Pippen would have likely won an NBA Defensive Player of the Year if shot blocking wasn't so popular during the 1990s. Scottie Pippen is probably the best perimeter defender the league's ever seen, a claim validated by his 8 all-defensive first-team honors status as the one player to record at least 2,300 steals and 900 blocks in his career. Made famous for living inside Magic Johnson's jersey during the 1991 NBA Finals, the 6'8" forward had exceptional length, quickness, and intelligence. From guard to power forward, Pippen was able to accomplish that task. He would have been considered the best defender ever in Bulls history if it wasn't for one special teammate.
Stall alone. Look at Russell come down. And what a play by Russell!
8. Kevin Garnett. When it came to protecting the basket, Garnett provided some of the best post defense in the league. Garnett was a power forward that played defense on power forwards, but he was able to guard centers as well. Before Garnett came to town, he was one of the best rebounders in the NBA, which is why he led the league in rebounding for 4 straight seasons. Every time the opponent came down the floor, it was likely going to be a one-shot possession. Garnett, like Bryant, played similar opponents and made an appearance on the all-defensive team each year in the 2000s. If you like fierce intensity from your big men, Garnett was probably someone you really enjoyed watching. Incredibly gifted on both ends of the floor, the big ticket was selected to 12 all-defensive NBA teams. He won the Defensive Player of the Year award in 2008. The same year he, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen led the Boston Celtics to an NBA championship.
Move and pass.
7. Ben Wallace. When you look at his career highlights, his stats speak for themselves. Wallace was an all-time defensive force that caused havoc in the 2000s. He is a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, something he accomplished in 5 seasons. During the early 2000s, Wallace was a force on the boards and disrupting shots in the paint. Wallace was like Duncan because his size kept him from being quick. However, he made up for it with his hard work. The Pistons won a championship thanks to hard-working players, and Wallace was the leader of that charge. Despite being an undersized center at 6'9", he made up for it with his efforts on defense. 6. Gary Payton. When your nickname is The Glove, you'd better be a strong defender, and Payton more than lived up to the moniker. He guarded some of the top playmakers in the game during the 1990s and 2000s, made 9 NBA All-Defensive teams, and was seen as one of the best to never win a title before he won a ring with the Miami Heat in 2006. Gary Payton is perhaps the best defensive guard of all time. Payton led the league in steals in 1995-96 and was the DPOY that season. He is also ranked number 4 on the all-time steals list. His shoes always on the floor and moving, and his mind was completely in the game. He was the only point guard to win Defensive Player of the Year, which shows how good of a player he was. 5. Dikembe Mutombo. The first thing that usually comes to mind when we think about Mutombo is his signature finger wag. You can even find Mutombo today, years after he retired from the game, in commercials doing the finger wag. Mutombo's trademark act helped everyone know just how menacing of a defender, and more specifically a shot blocker he was throughout his career. He led the NBA in blocks for 3 straight seasons, and is second on the all-time block shots list. Over his career, he averaged 10.3 rebounds and 2.8 blocks per game. He is second on the all-time blocks chart, behind only Hakeem Olajuwon, while he is top 20 in all-time rebounds. 4. Tim Duncan. Duncan spanned a run of dominance from 1998 to 2015 and is the leader in all defensive team appearances, with 15 overall. Duncan was one of the best defensive centers in the NBA to ever play the game because of his length. Mr. Fundamental was true to his name and one of the original rim protectors. You might be asking yourself how the leader in all defensive teams could be only 4th on the list. For starters, he was truly just a rim protector. His length allowed him to contest shots at a high rate. Outside of the paint, he did not make much of an impact. His length is what allowed him to contest some shots, but his speed kept him from being an effective wing defender. Duncan averaged more than 2 blocks per game during his illustrious career, one that included 5 NBA championships and 2 Most Valuable Player awards. 3. Dennis Rodman. You can argue that no other player in league history played with more heart, passion, and intensity than Rodman, who was a defensive catalyst for the Pistons during the bad boy era and then with MJ's Bulls in the late 90s. During a time when there were several all-time great power forwards around the NBA, including Karl Malone, Charles Barkley, and Shawn Kemp, the Worm was always regarded as the best defender of the bunch. Rodman won the Defensive Player of the Year award in back-to-back years, 1990-91, and he was named to the NBA All-Defensive Team 7 times. His best trait on defense was his rebounding, so he concentrated all his skills on that. Rodman was able to guard the power forward and center positions. He was one of the quicker centers in the league, so he could come out and guard the wings as well. Overall, Rodman is one of the 3 best defenders of all time. 2. Hakeem Olajuwon. Some would put the Dream atop this list, and for good reason. He's the NBA's all-time leader in block shots, and the 2-time NBA champion also won a pair of Defensive Player of the Year awards and led the league in rebounding in both 1989 and 1990. He ranks 4th all-time in defensive win shares, and we may never see another player with his background and path to basketball again. Blocking 10 or more shots on the same night as tallying double digits in points, rebounds, and assists speaks volumes about a player's commitment to defense. A 2-time DPOY who made 9 all-defensive teams, Olajuwon led the league in defensive win shares for 4 straight seasons, from 1986-87 to 1989-90, topping the league in blocks per game 3 times. He's the only player with 3 career seasons of at least 8.0 defensive boards and 4.0 blocks per game. 1. Bill Russell. Russell has a case to be considered the best interior defender of all time. The NBA All-Defensive Team didn't start recognizing players until the 1968-1969 season. By that time, Russell had already played for the Boston Celtics from 1956 to 1968. In his final season in the NBA, he recorded All-Defensive First-Team honors. Thanks to Russell, his fundamentals dominated the defensive end and helped change the game of basketball. Even though Russell is not the all-time block leader, he revolutionized the idea of blocking shots. It was art when Russell completed the act. He didn't foul shooters because he had mastered perfect timing. After the block, most times his team regained possession because he would tip to himself or his teammates. Russell, an 11-time NBA champion and 12-time All-Star, was known for his shot-blocking prowess and man-on-man defense. Some have even described Russell as a defensive artist because of his astuteness on that end of the floor. At the end, I want to ask you, what other player do you think should be on this list, and what changes would you make to this list?